welcome to the Cinema Gold podcast. I'm your host, Larry Lace. Today we're giving our review of Superman and Lois, Episode 2, Heritage. But first, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Poddex. Poddex are a unique tool to engage and grow your podcast audience. You shuffle up the deck, pick a card, and run with the content. Visit poddex.com. Use promo code CinemaGold for 10% off your order. And if you'd like to support the show, you can buy us a coffee, buymeacoffee.com/CinemaGold. So Superman and Lois, Episode 2, as the family settled in Smallville and continues the mystery surrounding Captain Luthor. There was a time in the past when genre TV shows would get 2-hour premieres, where an episode that was actually a full hour without commercials got stretched out over a longer time slot, with additional commercial breaks and a behind-the-scenes special. Those days are long gone, but I suspected that the CW structures the first 2 episodes of its biggest new series accordingly. And just as Superman and Lois feels like the most ambitious addition to the network's DC lineup, its second episode feels like an extension of its first. And that's a good thing, not a bad thing. If anything, episode 2 is easier to watch than the strong pilot episode. At this point, you've either bought into the concept of the show as a family drama and the idea of Lois and Clark as parents, or you haven't. We've already met all the key players. Luckily, like most CW pilots do, we're not seeing characters take turns introducing themselves to the camera, allowing the story to grow and breathe. What that means is this show gets more action. It feels like we've spent a little more time with Superman costume than we did in the first episode. And if you like the cinematic look and feel of those sequences before, you're in luck. Because there's no sign that they blew their effect budget on that episode. This show just looks great compared to the rest. That shouldn't be a surprise, right? I mean, it's Superman. You either go big or go home with the Man of Steel. Hence the show's widescreen look and amped up special effects and the new redesigned costume. Episode 2 isn't wall-to-wall action, but when we get it, it counts. And it looks terrific. And that's what matters. The episode 2 title, Heritage, refers very much to Jonathan and Jordan Kent, particularly the latter. The parental decision is made to keep him home from school after his surprise release of energy at the Schuster mines, specifically so that Clark can take him to the Fortress of Solitude for evaluation by the Kryptonian technology stored there, and to gauge his power levels. Jonathan, on the other hand, has to go to a school where he doesn't feel terribly welcome, especially when steps were taken to make sure that the football team's playbook never arrived for him to study, thereby making his life a little harder on the field where he usually excels. However, this episode's title could also refer to how much Smallville has changed since Clark left. While Lana's husband, Kyle Cushing, isn't the most likable character in the show, he effectively speaks for the people of Smallville who feels they've been left behind and who are in desperate need of a job creator like Daily Planet owner and apparently capitalist Morgan Edge. So far, Clark dealing with the Jordan issue means that he hasn't yet come to terms with how Smallville has moved on, or fallen, depending on how you look at it, since he's been gone. And it's Lois who finds herself in the line of fire with the locals. Something that tells me that eventually this is going to change, whether in a confrontation with Kyle, or whether it's Lois who forces him to reckon with what's happening. We also learn more about the mysterious Captain Luthor, who may not be the villain he was presented as last week. For starters, He uses non-lethal force on the soldiers who confront him, and despite the dangerous situations he's created in the past, they were clearly designed to draw Superman out rather than cause maximum loss of life. But more importantly, it seems he comes for a world where Kal-El was either inherently evil or let his power corrupt him. And and he has his own relationship with General Sam Lane on his world. Some harrowing footage that closes the episode indicates that Captain Luthor's grudge against the Man of Steel is justified. In case you can't tell, Heritage is juggling quite a bit, but it doesn't get it in its own way while dealing with its more dramatic moments and its weightier subjects with relative ease. I often cringed at the Supergirl model of journalism, or what has passed for it with the Central City Citizen on The Flash. Taking both Lois and Clark out of the Daily Planet may help in that regard. And so far, they seem to be easing Lois into doing some investigative journalism here. There's still the question of whether Lois actually has enough to do at the moment, but since this episode feels very much like an extension of the pilot, I'm willing to give everyone the benefit of the doubt right now. Speaking of Lois getting into trouble, we do get our first look at the new Morgan Edge this week. Adam Rayner is Edge this time around, taking over from the Earth 38 version, who is played by Adrian Pastor over on Supergirl. As with Sam Lane, we can chalk this bit of recasting up to the changes made to reality by the massive crossover event Crisis on Infinite Earths. Edge is a little bit more subdued, a bit more cynical, and more of the boardroom shark that was first introduced in the comics. He's not exactly the nicest guy in the show, but time will tell if he's actually the season's big bad, or if they're going to eventually give him some nuance as well. The core cast is really what powers everything through. There's probably not much reason for me to hit this point every week, but seeing Tulloch and Hoechlin as parents is a new wrinkle for the characters overall, and the pair hit this pretty effortlessly. In particular, the redesigned "You Hear Your Mother" after Lois puts the boys in their place during a blow-up is both perfectly delivered and a little funny. Even Superman knows who's in charge. That entire scene could have gone south in less gifted hands, but the four actors who make up this Kent family make it work. The warmth between Jordan and Alexander as Jonathan and Jordan Kent, that feels even more pronounced in this episode than the previous one. Particularly when they're getting along, they're fun and believable as brothers. And they are refreshingly free of the overwritten teen dialogue that has become a staple over the last couple of decades. It also helps that the entire young cast are actually believable as high school freshmen. It's pretty funny to think Jordan, Jonathan, and Sarah are supposed to be the same age that Clark, Lana, and Pete were in the first season of Smallville, for example. It feels like the pieces are all in place now, and that there are even bigger and better things ahead. So I'm gonna rank this episode as a. Ooh, that's actually a tough call. I'll give it a 4 out of 5. It's not the best. It's pretty good for starting out, for being a second episode. It's not an amazing episode, but it's pretty good compared to The Flash and Batwoman and all the other CW shows. I definitely would put it higher up than the second episode of Arrow, which started the whole Arrowverse. But that's my review for today. If you previously, like I've said, if you want to support the show, you can buy me a coffee. buymeacoffee.com/cinemagold. And if you want to be a part of the show in a future episode, send us a voicemail at 682-305-0483. And we can air your comment voicemail on the show. And of course, you can remain anonymous if you'd like. Follow us on Twitter at CinemaGold2. Like us on Facebook. And thanks for joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow.